Hi everybody.
Hi everybody.
Today we will detect starch in plants using iodine. But before we start, we gotta know what starch even is. Starch forms when a plant ties hundreds of glucose molecules into a long chain. That is starch. Because the human body can also untie starch to get glucose like plants do, starchy foods are often called nutritious. So let's start it.
But
Now,
when special ingredients are potato and
the
lemon.
Now, before we start, we always gotta get our gloves. Wait a second.
There's one glove only.
Now, remember, always wear protective gloves when doing an experiment.
Or you're gonna hurt.
So, let's put the potato
into the bottle.
Or the cup. Whoa.
To the cup.
And the lemon.
In the cup.
After that, we gotta add in hot water. Oh, it's hot. Now remember, when using hot water, always bring an adult with you.
You need an adult. Or
in hot water, some of the starch in either plant will dissolve into solution. But there's actually one problem. The problem is, when starch dissolves in water, the solution is colorless. So unless we get a little help from these two chemicals, we won't actually detect any starch. So let's prepare the mixture. Now we have an open vial, and we have to put in 1 big spoonful of copper sulfate penta hydrate.
What is penta?
Penta means 5. So the chemical formula will be CuSO4.
Oh my goodness.
Now get a spoon. Okay. Put it in there.
Oh my gosh.
Do not spill.
Oh, I spilled.
Okay, that's a lot. Now be careful. Copper sulfate is toxic on contact with skin or eyes. And also avoid release of copper sulfate into the environment. In other words, do not pour solutions down the drain. Next, we have to get a solution of potassium iodide. This will be our supply of iodide ions, which will then react with copper sulfate to form iodine. Pour it in. Be sure not to get any leftovers. You see it's turning into this brownish color. That's because the potassium iodide will react with the copper sulfate pentahydrate. After it reacts, wait, stop that. Now be careful, machine.
No glitting, yeah.
So after that,
we
gotta shake for 10 seconds.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 10.
After he's shaken for 10 seconds, let's open the vial. Now be careful. When you're doing this experiment, do not breathe in any iodine fumes. That's because the iodine will react with the water in our skin to form hypoiodous acid and hydroiodic acid, both of which are highly corrosive. And I'm kind of scared. Oh, that wasn't overwhelming. Now, let's get a pipette and drip 5 drops of this solution into
Count
2
and
cups.
I'll draw.
So get 5 drops in there. 1, 2, 3,
10,
4,
4,
5.
6,
2,
7,
3,
4.
4, 5. Done.
Done.
Now you see the potato solution turned this blackish blue, while the lemon turned more of an orange.
Yeah.
So the potato solution turned bluish, black, or dark blue, whatever you call it. That's because the potato starch reacts with the iodine in solution, which is this.
Whatever.
Because the reaction is highly sensitive, you need to cut the lemon first. Otherwise, you'll get this bluish precipitate in your lemon cup too. Thanks for watching, and now let's go to the explanation. Now let's see how the reaction proceeded. First of all, we gotta know where the iodine came from. When we mixed the potassium iodide and copper sulfate, you might have thought of an ion exchange reaction, forming copper iodide and potassium sulfate. However, this reaction doesn't always apply to precipitation. Sometimes the leftovers, maybe both of these guys, could be soluble and therefore not form any precipitate. Or, like today's example, let me put a 2 here, create other stuff. So for every 2 copper sulfates, we need 2 potassium iodides. Let's see. Then we get 2 copper 2 plus ions, 2 sulfate ions, and 2 potassium ions, and 2 iodide ions. Here, a redox reaction occurs, where this iodine ion surrenders its electrons to copper, forming 2 copper 1 plus ions, 2 sulfate ions, and 2 potassium ions, along with 1 iodine molecule. So what we get would be copper 1 sulfate, unlike the copper 2 sulfate we had at the start, potassium sulfate, and iodine. Now, if we simplify the reaction so we can get anything that is not involved in the reaction, then we get the following. 2Cu2 plus, let me get some space here. 2Cu2 plus 2I minus will be a simplified form, because the sulfate and potassium ions don't actually take part in any big reactions. Next, we gotta know what starch really is. Starch is something called a polymer. Polymers are used everywhere, such as your plastic bag. Polymers all are made out of monomers. These monomers, not by 1 or 2 of them, but hundreds or thousands of them link together to form a polymer. In the case of starch, N would be 300, between 300 and 500, while the monomer would be glucose. Because starch is rich in glucose, and we need glucose, we sometimes call starchy foods healthy or nutritious. Other polymers include polyethylene. Now, remember, when you draw a polymer, you don't draw the entire molecule, but you draw it somewhat like this. You draw the monomer and 2 bonds sticking out of brackets. Because this reaction happens readily, this reaction is also sensitive. So, if you ever did this at home and then you cut the potato first, you would most likely recognize bluish precipitate on the lemon too. Some of the starch might have gone on the lemon. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next videos. Bye!